Hello everyone. I hope you guys can hear me. Okay, thank you for joining. Uh, Hello, namaskar, adab, vanakkam. We are here to study philosophy, but let me introduce myself. My name is Mahesh Mali, and I've been living in the US and studying and working here for past around 5 years. Uh, I'm studying philosophy, history for past few years, and now I have taken on teaching also. My past lectures included, I think some of you may have joined. My past lectures included metaphysics and epistemology. Here we studied Hegel and Marx. To be exact, Hegel's idealism. By the way, this is based on idea, and Marx's materialism. And epistemology is basically the study of how do we gain knowledge, what is knowledge, how do we know that we have a knowledge. So in epistemology, we studied John Locke. He was a British philosopher in modern times, and René Descartes. He was the father of modern philosophy. We studied John Locke's empiricism and Descartes' rationalism. So those are the previous lectures I concluded. Now today, to be exact, we are going to study another branch of philosophy. So this is one branch of philosophy. This is another branch of philosophy, which are one of the major branches. Now we are going to study the third branch of philosophy, which is very important, which is ethics. I'm hoping all of you have seen the PDF of the course structure. And I will go through the course. I'll go through the PDF in this lecture. So to start with, how is the course structured to understand? We'll start today's lecture with understanding what is the philosophy, what is the value of philosophy, why do we study philosophy? That is the question we're going to focus on, address today. So this is a real incident. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I was having some long debate on WhatsApp with my friends. I think one of the friends has joined this lecture. He was adamant on saying that there is no use of philosophy, there is no value to philosophy, and those are the questions we're going to address today as well, and in the last lecture of metaethics. Well, let's see how we have structured this course. So ethics is basically the study of how should we live, what should we do, what is right and wrong, does right and wrong exist in the world, or is it just a part of our emotions? So those are the type of questions we're going to address in this course. To start with, we'll go through what is philosophy today. In the next lecture, we're going to study Plato's Euthyphro. This is a book's name. This is Plato's book. Euthyphro is a person in ancient Greece. He's having discussions with Socrates. Again, Socrates is a person. He is a very important and the most important philosopher in the history of Western thought. Socrates is a teacher of Plato. Plato is a pupil, Shishya. Tha Socrates. In this Euthyphro, we're going to discuss the discussion between Socrates and Euthyphro on the question that what is pious, what is moral, and what is immoral, what is pious and impious. These are the questions we are going to study in the next lecture. Now, this is ancient philosopher. This is also ancient philosopher. We're going to start from the ancient philosophers. In the next lecture after that, we are going to study the third most important ancient philosopher, Aristotle. You probably have heard these names before. We're going to study Aristotle's virtue theory or virtue ethics. And virtue ethics are the most important ethics which were active in people's mind for almost 1,000 or more than 1,000 years. It only I think more than 2,000 years, I would say. Since Aristotle, the virtue ethics was not challenged until the modern times. Now, what happened in the modern times that they challenged virtue ethics? They challenged Aristotle. To study that, we are going to start on the next lecture. I think it will be the fourth lecture on the modern philosophy. Modern philosophy spans around 17th and 18th century in Europe. In modern philosophy, we are going to study two normative ethics theories. Now, what is normative? I'm going to use quite a lot of technical words, but I will also tell you the meaning, and I'll also try to tell you the meaning in Hindi as well. So, what is normative theory or normative theories? So, normative literally means how do we decide something is, right and wrong? In normative ethics theories, how do we decide something which is, if it is right or wrong, good or bad, good versus evil? So, in trying to decide what is good versus evil, we are going to study two modern philosophies. One is utilitarianism, and second, which is against this. These are rivals to each other. The second is deontological. Now, these are very technical words. Don't worry about it, as we're going to study these theories later on in the later part of this course. You will understand the meaning of these technical words. Deontological ethics. In this, we are going to study two philosophers, J.S. Mill, and he was working with East India Company. His father, James Mill, I always tell this to people, James Mill, he was an historian, also worked with us. I think he was also a member of parliament in England. He wrote 6 volumes of history of India, in which he divided basically how India was ruled by different people. And it was used later on to divide us in the British rule. Anyway, we're now going to study the history of J.S. Mill. We're going to study the philosophy of him, of his philosophy. The second philosopher we're going to study is Bentham, Jeremy Bentham. Again, Jeremy Bentham was friend, or these two people, James Mill and Bentham, knew each other, and James Mill's son, J.S. Mill, studied with Bentham. So utilitarianism is basically the philosophy of both of them. Bentham gave this philosophy, J.S. Mill took it to the new level. In this, we are going to study my favorite, Immanuel Kant. And Immanuel Kant is the most important philosopher of modern times. Immanuel Kant's level, if I have to compare with other philosophers, Immanuel Kant comes with Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and then Kant. So it is that important. His thoughts changed the whole philosophical thought process after him. You know the Copernican revolution in science? Nicholas Copernicus was a person, I think he was a church's person. He set out to prove that the earth is at the center. He was trying to say that the earth is at the center. But then when he checked, when he empirically उसके अनुभव से उसने जब चेक किया, when he checked with his empirical observations, he found out that सूर्य सोलर सिस्टम के बीच में है और पृथ्वी उसके आजू बाजू घूम रही है. You see, now that changed the whole thought process in science. Immanuel Kant is that important in philosophy. Copernicus to science, Immanuel Kant to philosophy. So to study him and for me to teach him, it is my honor and pleasure also. So these are the modern philosophers we are going to study in the course. Later on, we'll come to the 20th century, the last century. Here we are going to study the political and justice part of the ethics. Now, what political and justice part of ethics we're going to study? So there are two thoughts which emerged after the World War II. One is, well, their thoughts were present, but they took a new shape. And two people, one is Robert Nozick, and the second one is John Rawls. These two people, these are against each other. Their thoughts are rivals to each other. They are not enemies, by the way. When I say the thoughts are opposite to each other, they're just arguing logically opposite to each other. They're not enemies. And जब भी मैं आलोचना की बात करूंगा, it will not be a political criticism. When I say आलोचना, when I say criticism, it will not be political criticism. Political criticism comes from the fact that there is an interest behind that criticism. जैसे कि मुझे कोई इलेक्शन लड़ना है या मुझे कोई बिजनेस स्थापन करना है, इसलिए मैं किसी की आलोचना करूंगा. That is interest-led criticism. The philosophical criticism is not exactly interest-led. What interest I'm talking about is social, political. Well, there are social and political interests, but they're not really economical interest behind it. Mostly those will be thought interests, change of thought, change of society, etc. Now, Nozick gave libertarian ethics, or how the libertarian society will work, how the government will set up, how the business will function. So that is quite diverse. We'll also go through the ethics part of it. Rawls, against him, gave an egalitarian thought. He wrote Theory of Justice. He wrote Anarchy, State and Utopia. We're going to study those two books, and those two books are also in that PDF if you have seen. Now this is 20th century. This 20th century I was just talking about, we're going to study mostly the distributive justice. Distributive justice, what is distributive justice? It means the advantages which comes out of the cooperation in the society, should they be equally distributed? जैसे कि should the rich people should have higher taxes because they are earning quite a lot? Should we take half of Elon Musk is $1 billion. Even if we take it, he will not feel the dent, but it will be very useful for millions and hundreds of millions of people. Should we do that? Is that moral? Is that ethical? That is the question we're going to study. Arakshan. आरक्षण का भी टॉपिक इसमें आएगा डिस्ट्रीब्यूटिव जस्टिस में. उसके बाद the last lecture will be on meta ethics. Again, this is a ethical, this is a quite a technical word, but don't worry about it. In metaethics, what is metaethics? What we are going to study in metaethics? So, I'll give you an example for this. Let's say cheating. Let me write this down, whole thing. Cheating is wrong. See this sentence. Now the question is this sentence true or false? I'm not asking the rightness or wrongness of this statement. The rightness and wrongness are two different things from truth and falsity. Understanding? The truthfulness of this sentence depend upon the wrongness of this action. But the question is, this sentence, the wrongness of this sentence, is it present in the world like this duster is present? Right? You understanding me? The wrongness of this sentence, the truth of this sentence, is it present in the world? Are the facts about wrongness of this action natural? The facts, are they natural or non-natural? Or they are not real? So that's what we are going to study. Now this is going to confuse you, but that is one of my goal, to make you confuse a little bit. And some people thrive on this type of philosophical confusion because they try to find answers then. And then you can join the next lecture. Okay, so we'll start with unusual, I will say, unusual examples. Those examples, I want you to listen very carefully. Those examples are ethical problems. Okay? Ethical issues. The first example, it is a real life example. It is a hypothetical. The first one is hypothetical. I will come to the real one, and that is much more disturbing. Some people will find it very disturbing, but I want you to tell me what is the rightness in it and what is wrongness in it. But let's go through the examples first. Suppose, consider you are a family of 8 people. You are married, आपके 2 बच्चे हैं, आपके पापा और मम्मी हैं, दादा दादी है, तो लगभग 8 लोग हो गए. आप बहुत वेल्दी हो, आप आपके पास बहुत पैसा है, आपके पास इतना पैसा कि आपके पास एक याट है, एक बड़ी बोट है. उस बोट पे आप वेकेशन पे गए हो, वेकेशन पे इंडियन ओशन में गए हो, एकदम अंदर. और ऐसा सिचुएशन, स्टॉर्म वगैरह आके, साइक्लोन वगैरह आके, कुछ ऐसी सिचुएशन बनती है जो 9वां आदमी, वो ड्राइवर है, पायलट है, वो तुमको कहता है कि भाई साहब, now this is the crucial part to listen. There are some situation, I'm not saying this is a real example. ऐसी सिचुएशन बनी है कि जहां पे आपको कुछ सामान कम करना पड़ेगा. आपने सारा सामान फेंक दिया, स्टॉर्म आ रहा है, आपको बचना है. वो ड्राइवर बोल रहा है कि ये साइंटिफिकली पॉसिबल है कि नहीं मुझे पता नहीं, लेकिन आई एम जस्ट क्रिएटिंग अ सिनारियो. ड्राइवर बोल रहा है कि दिस इज नॉट इनफ, यू समवन हैव टू die to save the other people because of the storm. The question is, who is going to give their life in the family to save these 7? Now, conditions in this scene are, you cannot give your life because apparently the whole family is dependent upon your work, your day-to-day life. Okay, you are the sole earner in the family. Even you are very wealthy family, but you are the whole family is dependent upon you, so you cannot die. कुछ लोग बोलेंगे सर मैं ही जान दे दूंगा मेरे फैमिली को बचाने के लिए, लेकिन the situation is different. The driver, the pilot cannot die, then everybody dies if pilot dies, the driver. The question is, who will come forward? If nobody comes forward, how to choose? And if we choose anybody except you and the driver, is it right or is it wrong? Some people will say it is right because you are saving the rest of the family. Some people will say it is wrong. How can you kill someone like this? Now we are going to study this. This is type of ethical problem I'm talking about. And I deliberately chosen this hard hypothetical problems to discuss. The next problem I want to discuss is a railway engine problem. Suppose you are a driver of a railway engine that is going 100 kilometers per hour on this railway track. Okay, you are here. You see some people working here. There are around 5 people working here. They are deaf. They cannot hear the train coming. They are busy in their work. They are working on this train track, and something has happened that they were not notified that the train is coming. Now you are desperate to stop the train, but if you cannot stop the train because there are quite a lot of people in the train. If you stop it, there will be a lot of injuries, lot of deaths. You are desperate, and in the desperation you see there is a one track going here. You see, alas, okay, we found it. We found a track. Let's go on to this track. But there is one person working here. Now the question is, to save this 5, will you choose this path and kill this person? And many people will say, because of the situation, of course I will take this path. See, I'm saving 5. I mean, well, it's not a profitable situation, but for the lack of a better word, we are in profit. For lack of a better word. Now, the question is it right to kill one person to save 5? In same situation, suppose you are a doctor. You are, there are 3 people there, right in front of you, who needs a surgery, and one person has an organ, the other person needs. The doctor will not take one person's organ, put it on others, even if the one person, the organ the doctor is taking from is dying. But then the situation is, you're saving the other person. He is dying anyway. Why can't we do that? Is it right? Is it wrong? Quite a lot of people will say it is wrong. Well, why it is wrong? Philosophy asks that question. You see what I'm getting at? The harder philosophical questions. Now, the third and the last question I want to discuss, philosophical ethical problem I want to discuss, is for English sailors. In 1884, this is a real life situation. It's a real life incident. 4 sailors, Navik, were stranded in Atlantic Ocean. Because of some storm, their ship has gone down. The first one was Thomas Dudley. He was a captain. The second one was Edwin Stevens. He was a first mate. The third one was Edmund Brooks. He was a sailor. And Richard Parker. He was a cabin boy. Richard Parker was a cabin boy. He is an important character in this story. कुछ दिन उनके पास एक लाइफ बोट थी. They survived on that lifeboat, and the lifeboat had some ration. कुछ खाने का सामान था, वो कुछ दिन उस पर सर्वाइव किए. कुछ दिनों तक उन्होंने कुछ नहीं खाया. बीच में रिचर्ड पार्कर जो 17 साल का बच्चा था, उसके दोस्तों ने बताया था कि मत जा, लेकिन वो गया. तो रिचर्ड पार्कर को उस बाकी लोगों के उन्होंने एडवाइस दिया था कि तू समंदर का पानी मत पी. उसने फिर भी पिया था. He drank the sea water and he fell sick. Well, after a few days, they caught a turtle and they survived on that turtle for a few days. And this is a real life story. They ate that turtle. They survived on that turtle. 4 people. After a few days again, they were hungry. They were not finding any turtle. They did not have any strength left in them, I think. And one of the persons suggested, let's take a lottery, lottery system. We'll decide, or the lottery will decide who is to die so that others can survive. Well, one person in this, someone opposed to the lottery system, and the lottery system, it failed. After a few days again, one of the person suggested, let's kill Richard Parker because he is dying anyway, because he's drank the seawater and there is no ship inside who can save us and save Parker as well. So it is better for the 3 of you to kill him and save these 3, because these people have their families waiting for them. Richard Parker does not have any family, and ironically, he was an orphan. He was an orphan. On the 20th day or 21st day, one of the person killed Richard Parker. And on the 24th day, this is what Thomas Dudley said. Now I'm saying Thomas Dudley's words.
On the 24th day, as we were having our breakfast, a ship appeared at last.
He wrote these words in his diary. Now, when they got back to England, I think a German ship saved them, and they got back to England. They were arrested, and they were tried in a court of law. And, I'm not going to tell you the judgment for now. But the question here is, was their action right or was their action wrong? And the rightness and wrongness of this action or the other situations I gave you, is it subjective or objective? Matlab, just because you think it is right, does it make it right? Or just because you think it is wrong, does it make it wrong? Because you are here, let's say, and the other person is here. He will say it is right, he will say it is wrong. Then what is right and wrong? Because he is also a person, The value he has, he also has the value, same value. Just because he is a prime minister and he is a chaprasi doesn't give them the right to decide what is right and wrong. Well, in society it does, but not in this argument. You see what I'm saying? The question is, how do we decide what is right and wrong? We'll study in this course. So those 3 examples or 4 examples I gave you are kind of a trailer to what is coming. Okay, now we'll go to the main question of this lecture. What is philosophy? Philosophy literally means love. This is a verb. And Sophia means knowledge or wisdom. Basically, love for wisdom literally means philosophy. By the way, the love for wisdom does not mean facts. Like India got independence on 15th of August 1947 is a fact. Everybody knows the fact, but that's not the question philosophy tries to argue about. It is something different than facts, and you will understand it later on. So, in what is philosophy question, we'll go through and this will not take much time. We'll go through the branches of this subject, branches of philosophy. One is ontology, or it is sometimes also called as metaphysics. What is metaphysics? Metaphysics is study of being, the study of reality. What is actually real? Am I real? Or my thoughts are real? Are my thoughts real? What is the reality of my thoughts? What is the existence of my thought? We try to answer the questions like, what exists and what is its nature? What is the nature of this marker? Is this marker just in my thoughts, or is the marker having some material existence? At the start of the lecture, I told you my previous lectures included metaphysics. We studied Hegel and Marx. Hegel said explicitly, his philosophy, that there is no material existence. There is only existence of consciousness, of thought, चेतना. हिंदी में उसे चेतना कहेंगे. माइंड, आत्मा, कुछ लोग आत्मा कह सकते हैं. हेगेल और शंकराचार्य की फिलॉसफी लगभग सेम ही है. हेगेल जिसे एब्सोल्यूट कहता है, शंकराचार्य उसे ब्रह्म कहते हैं. उसके खिलाफ आया मार्क्स का विचार. मार्क्स कहता है कि रियलिटी थॉट नहीं है, रियलिटी मटेरियल एग्जिस्टेंस है. ये पेन किसी के विचार नहीं है, किसी का विचार नहीं है, एब्सोल्यूट या ब्रह्म का विचार नहीं है. इसके मूल में द फंडामेंटल ऑफ दिस मैटर इज अणु, एटम, पदार्थ. सृष्टि के मूल में पदार्थ है. So those type of question we try to answer in metaphysics. Plus we also try to answer, does time exist? What is the existence, or what is the reality of time? What is the nature of time? Does time exist? There is this MacTaggart, a British philosopher. He said that time does not exist, and he has proven it logically. I will take it someday. In metaphysics, we try to answer the question of, do we have a free will? Do we have a freedom in this Srushti universe? Or are we just determined by the nature's deterministic laws? Well, I'm dropping this. This fell on the ground because of the nature's laws. There is no free will in this. So I also fall down and touch the ground if I am in the place of this duster. So does that mean that I am determined, my whole life is determined by the deterministic laws of the nature, or do we have a free will? Do I decide to do something, or is it some cause that is led me to decide something? उसे हिंदी में नियतिवाद कहते हैं. डिटर्मिनिज्म इज नियतिवाद, म्हणजे तुम्हारी नीति पहले से तय है, क्योंकि सबकी नियति तय है. डिटर्मिनिस्टिक. So this type of question we try to answer in metaphysics. Epistemology is the second branch. This branch, I also take a second lecture on this branch last time. This is a study of knowledge. In this, we try to answer three fundamental questions. Well, more, but there are three fundamental questions. What is knowledge? How do we acquire knowledge? What is the process of acquiring knowledge? And the very disturbing question is, how do you know that you have knowledge of particular thing? How do you know that you know, basically? Now, the third question goes into skepticism. Sandehavad goes into skepticism quite a lot. But that is a very important question in epistemology. Basically, knowledge, I'll just give you a brief of this. Knowledge is justified true belief. Some people say it is a belief. Okay. How do you know that exists? Because I believe it exists, right? It's a belief. But some people will say, what is the truthness of that belief? So you have to give the truth condition to justify the belief. But then you also question, what is the truthness of this belief? How do you justify the truthness of this belief? Now you have to justify the truthness. Now the justification goes into skepticism goes into quite a lot of different theories like foundationalism, like coherentism. So that's not our study of inquiry. That's not at our scope of inquiry today. Third is axiology, ethics, or value theory. And in this course, if you are going to stay till last, the most important thing I want to make you understand is value. So many things in life, day-to-day life, personal, professional, whatever, depends upon this. Well, not depends upon this, but you can try to answer the questions of your personal and professional life with this concept. This concept looks very simple, but it's highly debated since Aristotle, Plato, and Buddha and all those times. And if you understand value, you understand ethics. I will not go too much into this, because what we try to answer is what should we live? How should we live? What should we do in some situation? What is action? What makes action right, or what makes action wrong? In this, again, there is a first order ethics and there is a second order ethics. Again, this is getting technical, don't worry about it. In the first order ethics, again, it is normative ethics and this is meta ethics. We went through this. In first order, we try to decide what makes action right or what makes action wrong. In the normative part, in the meta ethics part, what is the reality of that? If you say that cheating is wrong, what is the reality of that sentence? What makes it true? What makes the sentence false? If you understand this, value is very simple. The fourth branch, these are the three important branches, by the way, the most important branches. Then the other branches I will just dictate. The next branch is, this is also quite important, but the fourth branch is logic. Here we try to, study the valid and sound reasoning, logical reasoning, LR. You guys probably know about this. Now, to give you an idea what logic kind of how the logic works. You see, I'm going to give you a proposition, prastav. I'm going to give you the next proposition and I'm going to conclude. So this is how basically some logical reasoning works. So let's say if A is equals to B, this is my proposition. A is same as B. My second proposition is if B is equals to C, then I'm going to conclude A is equals to C. Yeah, C is equals to A. In this, we try to study three different reasoning. One is inductive reasoning, one is deductive reasoning, and one is abductive reasoning. However, the logic is not the study part of our inquiry in this course. No, but what is inductive reasoning, what is deductive, and what is abductive reasoning? Inductive reasoning is basically you get large data set, and then you try to conclude your conclusion. So let's say, for example, vaccines. You tried vaccine on first phase on 100 people, and then on the second, the higher set, 1,000 people, and then on the higher set, 10,000 or million people. By trying with higher set, you try to find a conclusion that how much effective it is, the efficacy rate. One more example, सारे कौवे काले होते हैं, ये sentence. It may not be objectively true, but it is subjectively works for us. क्योंकि हमने जिंदगी में सारे कौवे जो है काले ही देखे, लेकिन ऐसा हो सकता है दूसरे कलर का कौवा हो या पैदा हो. तो ये इंडक्टिव रीजनिंग हमें सृष्टि का ऑब्जेक्टिव सत्यनिष्ठ ज्ञान नहीं देता है, जो डिडक्टिव रीजनिंग देता है, जो मैथमेटिक्स है बेसिकली. लाइक a square plus b square is equals to c square, the Pythagoras theorem. The two sides of the right angle triangle, the square of two sides of right angle triangle is same as equal to the square of the hypotenuse. That will be true anywhere in your even in your dreams. It will be true because that is concluded by deductive method, mathematics. That is objective, सत्यनिष्ठ, वस्तुनिष्ठ. Sorry, that is not आत्मनिष्ठ. आत्मनिष्ठ नहीं है वो. ये आत्मनिष्ठ हो सकता है, सब्जेक्टिव हो सकता है. ये this has to be objective. अब्डक्टिव रीजनिंग क्या है? अब्डक्टिव रीजनिंग जैसे मान लो कि आपके पास बहुत बड़ा एक मार्बल्स की एक थैली है, उसमें 1000-2000 मार्बल्स हैं. तो आपने एक कोने में रखी, कोई आदमी अपने घर पे आया, उसने वो मार्बल्स देखे, उसने आजू बाजू मार्बल्स, जो थैली थी उसके आजू बाजू कुछ मार्बल्स पड़े हुए देखे. वो मार्बल्स उसको देखे कि वो लाल मार्बल्स है और दीज आर रेड मार्बल्स. देन ही कंक्लूडेड इमीडिएटली विथ वेरी स्मॉल डेटा an immediate conclusion that the box has all the red marbles. It may be or may not be true. So deductive and inductive and abductive method does not give us the final truth, but it is useful for us. This is quick conclusion. This conclusion comes after the more the set, the larger the set, the better it is. Deductive method gives us the final objective truth. Other philosophies are aesthetics, where we study inquiry into art and what is beauty. Does beauty exist? Now, if I say this is beautiful, is the beauty of this duster in itself, or just because I think it is beautiful, that makes it beautiful? You see what I'm saying? Is it subjective or objective again? Beauty exists in this, or it is just a part of my emotions? If I say, can something be aesthetically valuable? If I say this is aesthetically valuable, even if it is not a piece of art, even if it is not a piece of beauty, is it aesthetically valuable? So those we try to answer in aesthetics, philosophy of aesthetics. Then there is philosophy of mind, where we try to inquire into nature of the mental phenomena and consciousness. Then there is philosophy of language, where we try to find meaning of sentences, where we try to find the meaning of meaning itself. You see, philosophy of language. Then there is political philosophy. Political philosophy, some people will say this is a sub branch of ethics. How should the society function? How should the government be? Which is the best form of government? Which will give us the perfect government, perfect society? No problems exist. Communism thinks it can do it. Capitalism thinks it can do it. But are they perfect forms of governments? Democracy, is that a perfect form of government? Some people will say yes, because we don't have any option. But if I tell you that कुछ साल पहले हम घोड़े पे सवारी करते थे, घोड़ा गिर गया, एक्सीडेंट हो गया, हमारी जान जाती थी. आज हम बाइक पे, ट्रेन पे, कार में प्रवास कर रहे. But does that make it safe? Does that make it perfect? तो डेमोक्रेसी हम प्रॉब्लम ये है डेमोक्रेसी का, हमारे पास गाड़ी के आगे की चीज जो ज्यादा सेफ है और ज्यादा अच्छी है, ज्यादा बेटर है, ऐसी चीज है नहीं, इसलिए हम गाड़ी चलाते हैं. गाड़ी चलाते वक्त भी आदमी की जान जा सकती है. तो डेमोक्रेसी क्यों है? क्योंकि डेमोक्रेसी से अच्छी चीज हमारे पास अभी तक नहीं है. दैट मेक्स इट डेमोक्रेसी द बेस्ट टिल दिस सिचुएशन. 100 साल, 150 साल, 1000 साल बाद क्या होगा क्या पता. शायद डेमोक्रेसी से कोई बेहतर चीज एग्जिस्ट कर सके. नाउ दिस इज द question I try to answer, what is philosophy, by answering with different branches and their study or inquiry into the questions. Now I want you to focus on what is the value of philosophy, what makes philosophy valuable. Okay, so we are going to study the value of philosophy from a book. That book is this, The Problems of Philosophy, from Bertrand Russell. Bertrand Russell is an English philosopher of past century, 20th century. Hence, he's one of the most important philosophers in analytical philosophy, and I think in language also. So he has written a book, this book, The Problems of Philosophy, where he has tried to, put forth what problems the philosophy is trying to answer. And then at the end of this book, the last chapter, it is a value of philosophy. What makes the philosophical inquiry valuable? Why do we do it? Like my friend said that day, it is just a waste of time. It is not useful. So let's find out if it is useful or not. So to study the value of philosophy from this book, I'm going to read the actual book, not exactly the whole book. Some quotations I have marked from this book, and I'm going to dictate and I'm going to explain it afterwards. So let's start with the first quotation.
It is the more necessary to consider this question in view of the fact that many men, under the influence of science or of practical affairs, are inclined to doubt whether philosophy is anything better than innocent but useless trifling, hair-splitting distinctions, and controversies on matters concerning which knowledge is impossible.
He tries to say that why do people doubt but philosophy is useless? Why do we doubt that philosophy does not, is not valuable? Because they come from the influence of science, the practical affairs. And he talks about the practical man, and I'll come to that in the third quotation. And in this chapter, he tried to suggest that philosophical knowledge is not possible. Well, of course it is not possible. That is that philosophy does not answer any questions. Let me tell you straight. If you're here to find answers, final objective answers, then you're not going to find any, but you're going to find something else. And that is much more valuable than the answers. And we'll study why. So he says, because of science and practical affairs, people try to say that, why do we study philosophy? It's useless. Well, let's find out. Now, second quotation, he says,
Physical science, through the medium of inventions, is useful to innumerable people
quite a lot of people. The science is useful to quite a lot of people.
who are wholly ignorant of it.
Even if you don't know science, how it works, it's still useful. The camera I'm saying, I don't know how it works. The car you drive, you don't know how it works. It's still useful for you. The medicines, the vaccines.
Thus, the study of physical science is to be recommended, not only or primarily because of the effect on the student, but rather because of the effect on mankind in general. Thus, utility does not belong to philosophy.
Now he says the science has number of utilities. It's useful to number of people. In fact, the whole mankind. Cars, vaccines, laptops, and internet, and so on, go on and on. But philosophy is not a utility. It's not like this pen works. It's not a utility. It's not ये साधन नहीं है to get somewhere. It's not a means to some end. But what it is, let's find out. Third quotation, he says,
If we are not to fail in our endeavor to determine the value of philosophy, we must first free our minds from the prejudices of what are wrongly called practical men. The practical man, as this word is often used, is one who recognizes only material needs, who realizes that men must have food for the body, but is oblivious of the necessity of providing food for the mind.
He talks about practical man. What is practical man? The practical man who recognizes that the body needs food to run. Body needs energy, and energy is we get it from food. But he does not recognize that we need food for the mind. So that is practical man. And practical man has what? He talks about, this is very important, prejudice. You probably have heard this name, you probably have not. Prejudice matlab pakshapat. Purvagraha. The literal meaning of prejudice is preconceived opinion that is not based on reason or actual experience. To give you an example quickly, what prejudice means is, let's say, what we do in day-to-day life, we define a person by his community or a community by a person. You see what I'm saying? ये तो ऐसा ही है क्योंकि ये तो उस कम्युनिटी का है, उस समूह का है, उस ग्रुप का है, उसका ग्रुप तो ऐसा ही है, उसका समूह तो ऐसा ही है. जाति हो सकती है, धर्म हो सकता है, ज्योग्राफिकल लोकेशन हो सकता है, नेशन हो सकता है. But we don't have actual experience of it, or we don't have reason for it to conclude. But we still conclude. When we do that, that is pakshapat, prejudice, ya purvagraha. And Bertrand Russell says the practical man has quite a lot of prejudices. He does not even recognize the food for the mind. Now next, in the next point, he says, and this is a very interesting point.
If you ask a mathematician, a mineralogist, a historian, or any other man of learning, what definite body of truths has been ascertained by his science, his answer will last as long as you are willing to listen. But if you put the same question to a philosopher...
What was the question? What body of truths has your inquiry ascertained? What have you found with your study?
But if you put the same question to a philosopher, he will, if he is candid, have to confess that his study has not achieved positive results such as have been achieved by other sciences.
And to be honest, Russell is quite candid here. He says that philosophy does not answer definite answers. It does not find definite truths. like mathematics, like science, like physics, chemistry, etc. Well, you will obviously will ask me, then why are you wasting your time? And that is a legitimate question. I'm not denying it. And that is the inquiry of this topic. Thus,
Thus, to a great extent, the uncertainty of philosophy is more apparent than real.
it is uncertain. It is not certain. It is not, we don't get final objective truths in philosophy.
Thus, to a great extent, the uncertainty of philosophy is more apparent than real. Those questions which are already capable of definite answers are placed in the sciences, while those only to which, at present, no definite answer can be given, remain to form the residue which is called philosophy.
He says that, let's say in ancient times, first century BC, like those times, 2000, 3000 years ago, when philosophy was a more speculative business of, let's say, heavens. Now, heavens has, it was a child of philosophy. It was an inquiry in philosophy. It was a major question in philosophy. Now that has turned to astronomy. See? You see, you understanding the value of philosophy. If these people have not questioned, have not, gotten into the speculative answers to try to answer what is heaven, we would not have astronomy today. Mind to psychology. And now he also says that if science has answered many questions like psychology, astronomy, what is still remaining then? Where do we, waste our time in philosophical speculations? He says there's still quite a lot of questions remaining. The questions are like, our universe, our life, does it have any purpose? What is the meaning of our life? What is the value of our life? Are good and evil important to the universe, or they are important to only us? Because of the social cooperation, we have to find out some good definitions and definition of bads. Is it only important to us, or it is also important to the universe? Consciousness, is it a part of universe, or is only us? Do we have a free will, or are we decided by the deterministic science, natural laws which science have told us, like the law of gravity falls down, we also fall down, we also can fall down? Does it mean that our life is decided by the natural laws, or do we have a free will? I am deciding it to throw it, put it on the ground, or some cause behind it had made me do it. These are the type of questions we try to speculate and hope that someday we'll get some objective answer. Now, next quote.
But it would seem that, whether answers be otherwise discoverable or not, the answers suggested by philosophy are none of them demonstrably true.
Again, he said it's not. Whatever answers given by the philosophy, it may not be true.
Yet, however slight may be the hope of discovering an answer,
like I said, in the future we may be able to find it like this.
It is part of the business of philosophy to continue the consideration of such questions, to make us aware of their importance, to examine all the approaches to them, and to keep alive that speculative interest in the universe which is apt to be killed by confining ourselves to definitely ascertainable knowledge.
Like science. However, even I will argue, or some philosophers will argue, that even science, does it give us objective knowledge? And even if it is giving objective knowledge, how can you objectively calculate? Science is based on two things: measurement and quantity, or measurement of a quantity. You're able to measure the temperature through the sensor, right? But are we able to measure a meaning, love, friendship. Why there is no objective measurement of this type of things? And even if we are saying that science gives us objective final truths, there is quite a lot of there is a debate going on between the quantum mechanics, quantum physics, and the theory of relativity. Basically, Niels Bohr started this debate with Einstein. Einstein said in the quantum mechanics, just to give you an idea, quantum mechanics on its the most disturbing part, it would, some people will find out that quantum mechanics says moon exists because you are looking at it. You're trying to measure if it is there. When you don't look at it, it does not exist. Quantum mechanics says this. It is based on quantum entanglement, and I think in 2021 or 2022, the quantum entanglement, those physicists, I think, won a Nobel Prize. In a way, John Bell's experiment in 1917 or 18, I believe, 1970s or 80s, he tried to prove quantum mechanics is the reality, but Einstein said no. The moon exists even if I don't look at it, he said. Well, there is still debate going on in sciences. So what is objective knowledge? Okay. The next, he says,
many philosophers, it is true, have held that philosophy could establish the truth of certain answers to such fundamental questions. Hence, once more, the value of philosophy must not depend upon any supposed body of definitely ascertainable knowledge to be acquired by those who study it.
Now he's coming to the value. He says the value is not into the definitely answerable questions. And next he says,
the value of philosophy is, in fact, to be sought largely in its very uncertainty.
अनिश्चितता. दर्शन पढ़ने की वैल्यू क्या है? उसके अनिश्चितता में ही निहित है, उसके अनसर्टेनिटी में ही निहित है. इट्स नॉट ए यूटिलिटी, ये कोई साधन नहीं है. समझ में आई बात?
The man who has no tincture of philosophy goes through life imprisoned in the prejudices derived from common sense, from the habitual beliefs of his age or his nation, and from convictions which have grown up in his mind without the cooperation or consent of his deliberate reason.
Now, this is very important. What he says here, a man who has gone through his life, born, lived, and died, who had studied no philosophy. By the way, everybody has some philosophy. You guys do have philosophy. You do philosophize every day. But the actual philosophy is when your thoughts are questioned logically, with logical reason. Are you willing to say that my thoughts are not the final truths? Are you going to be adamant on them? The people who are going to be adamant on their thoughts, no matter what, they are dogmatic thoughts. Those are dogmatic people. कट्टरतावादी जिन्हें हम कहते हैं. हालांकि कट्टरतावाद जो पॉलिटिकल डेफिनेशन है वो काफी अलग है. फिलोसॉफिकल डॉगमेटिज्म, दार्शनिक कट्टरतावाद उससे थोड़ी भिन्न है, थोड़ी अलग है. And he says the person who has not gone through philosophy is imprisoned again in prejudices. He is imprisoned in his prejudices. This is a jail I'm drawing. Why he is in the jail of prejudice? Because of three things. Well, there could be more, but he has listed down three. One is common sense. Second is habitual thoughts. And third is conviction without reason. common sense, habitual thoughts, adatan vishwas, and convictions without reason, without any logic. You're just concluding your thoughts that this exists, this is true, this is right, this is wrong. So that is quite kind of a prejudice. And that life is definite. That life is finite. That life is obvious. In that life, the common objects, things, common concept does not create any questions in our life, in our mind. What type of common things I'm talking about? So let's say if I ask you Arakshan. Yeah, Arakshan is quite debated topic. If I say, are you able to see this board, and do you logically can you prove that this board is you are seeing the board and the board in actuality is the same? Kant, we are going to study Kant, he says the actual board, however it is, I cannot see it. I cannot know. But what do I know? What is my knowledge? My knowledge is only limited to the appearance. You see, you may not have ever questioned if you are able to see this board the way it is. तुमको जो है वो दिख रहा है या दिख रहा है वैसा है क्या? सवाल. ये सवाल तुमको कभी नहीं पढ़ा होगा. कांट को पढ़ा था. So this type of question we try to answer in philosophy. Try to answer. The next quotation, I think there are only two remaining.
Philosophy, though unable to tell us with certainty what is the true answer to the doubts which it raises, is able to suggest many possibilities which enlarge our thoughts and free them from the tyranny of custom.
Kattartavadi tradition, custom se, we get liberated from with philosophy.
Thus, while diminishing our feeling of certainty as to what things are, it greatly increases our knowledge as to what they may be. It removes the somewhat arrogant dogmatism of those who have never traveled into the region of liberating doubt, and it keeps alive our sense of wonder by showing familiar things in an unfamiliar aspect.
He says that, of course, it liberates our prejudices, it liberates our dogmatic thoughts, it liberates our doubts. However, see the power of philosophy. And now, when I say power, now I have to define what power means. But to say what power means, let's consider, general definition in this case. What is the value of philosophy? It liberates us from doubt, dogmatic thoughts, and the tyranny of custom, tradition, etc. And it shows the familiar things, familiar concepts, familiar actions into unfamiliar concept action things, unfamiliar aspects. I will not give you example for this. How the familiar turns unfamiliar. How the familiar turns strange. It turns strange, by the way. And once you see the strange, you cannot unsee it. So that is a risk. I'm going to talk about the risks in a few minutes. And I'm not going to give you the example of that experience because quite hard to, express the experience of how the familiar turns unfamiliar, and you will see yourself. The second last quotation from this essay is,
the life of the instinctive man.
Again, he calls private man instinctive man.
The life of the instinctive man is shut up within the circle of his private interests. Family and friends may be included, but the outer world is not regarded, except as it may help or hinder what comes within the circle of instinctive wishes. In such a life, there is something feverish and confined, in comparison with which the philosophic life is calm and free.
Now here he talks about the private man again, the instinctive man. Instinctive man is a man of, भूख लगी खा लिया, मतलब भूख तो मुझे भी लगती है, भूख सबको लगती है, लेकिन द डिजायर्स ही टॉक्स अबाउट, hunger of desires, satisfaction of desires. He talks about an instinctive man living in a, now this is an analytic explanation, this is now how he talks about, this is, I'm just explaining, this is a private man, instinctive man. Now in this man, I'm going to take this as a general neutral term, by the way. ये इस व्यक्ति का ये अंडा है, समझ लो, विचारों का, उसका कंफर्ट जोन है वो, he is living in a bubble. Now इसके बाहर का थॉट इधर इस पे इस व्यक्ति को बताया जाता है या वो सुनता है, his reactions will either be of offense, will either be, and if the thought is too much stronger for him, and if he's trying to break his anda, his bubble, then he loses his calm, but for him the world only is finite, is only this, he cannot even think about the outside thought world. उसके लिए राइट एंड रॉन्ग यही पर है, बाहर का कुछ ना सवाल ना जवाब ना विचार आ ही नहीं सकता, है ही नहीं उसके लिए. इसलिए किसी ने ऐसी बात कह दी, जैसे ओशो, जैसे सोक्रेटिस, ऐसी बात किसी ने कह दी, गांधी, गोडसे ने क्यों मारा गांधी को? विचार, जो व्यक्ति अहिंसा की बात कर रहा है, अहिंसा, think about it logically, reasonably, ahimsa, है ना? तो private man, his life is confined, feverish, living in a bubble, and Russell says it's not calm and it's not free. But
in such a life there is no peace, but a constant strife between the insistence of desire and the powerlessness of will. In one way or another, if our life is to be great and free, we must escape this prison and this strife.
We'll try to see if we are able to escape in this course with the inquiry into ethics. Now he's summing up his essay. He's summing up what is the value of philosophy.
Thus, to sum up our discussion of the value of philosophy, philosophy is to be studied not for the sake of any definite answers to its questions, since no definite answers can, as a rule, be known to be true, but rather for the sake of the questions themselves. Because these questions enlarge our conception of what is possible, enrich our intellectual imagination, and diminish the dogmatic assurance which closes the mind against speculation. But above all because, through the greatness of the universe which philosophy contemplates, the mind also is rendered great, and becomes capable of that union with the universe which constitutes its highest good.
He goes on, but this is important to discuss. So again, to conclude, what is the value of philosophy? The value of philosophy is not in the definite answers. Because if you get definite answers, you stop thinking about it. Okay, that is it. What to think about? But philosophy's value is not in the definite answer. Its value is in the questions itself. And in fact, the questions don't stop. If a person is a real philosopher, if he is a philosopher, he will, for sure, candidly tell you that he has not gotten any answer. In fact, but he will be free, calm, and his thoughts will not be confined in a anda. The next topic is Plato's ring of Gyges. And I'm going to discuss Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates in the upcoming lectures in detail. But just to let you know, Plato was an ancient Greek philosopher. He's a very important philosopher of Western thought process, Western philosophy. He was born in 427 BC and died in 347 BC before Christ. And he was the student, pupil, shishya of Socrates. Now, who is Socrates? And I'll discuss that in the next lecture in detail. Socrates was the most important philosopher in the Western philosophical history. He was born in 470 BC and died in 399 BC. He was found guilty by the court of law, and we'll discuss it in the detail in the next lecture. And he had to drink a glass of poison, hemlock. Poison's name was hemlock, or which they used to call it. And he dutifully, some will say happily, drank it. That is Socrates. Now, the ring of Gyges. In this, Gyges is a person. Well, it's a character in a story. What is the story? Now, to understand the story, we have to understand Plato's book, Republic. In here, he discussed what is the best form of government. In this, now Plato's books, mostly all of them, are in dialogue form. What is a dialogue? Dialogue between Socrates and some Greek people. Socrates asked them a question. They try to answer. Then Socrates show them the contradiction between their definition and their life or their actual examples. See? Now, the ring of Gyges, this story has come up in the Republic, the book Republic, Plato's Republic. This story is told by a person named Glaucon to Socrates. They were discussing a question. And I think Glaucon was a student of Socrates. They are discussing a question. The question is why people act justly. Nyaypurvak. Why do we act justly? हम न्याय क्यों करते हैं? न्यायपूर्वक कार्य क्यों करते हैं? Is it because it is what is right to do? The second is, or it is because the convention, the custom, the tradition that is enforced through punishment and rewards. हम इसलिए न्याय करते हैं क्योंकि वो सही है, वो right है in itself, or do we do it because of fear from the punishment or the want of rewards? We want reward, that's why we act justly, or we don't want punishment, that's why we act justly, or is it because we acted because it is right? Glaucon says we act because of the second point. It is because we fear punishment and we want rewards. That's why we act justly. We don't act justly because it is right, Glaucon says. Now, to prove his point, he tells the story of Ring of Gyges. What is Ring of Gyges? Gyges is a character in that story. He is a shepherd. चरवाहा है वो. उसके पास sheeps है, and he goes and tend his flock in jungles and whatnot. One day he was tending his flock. उसके भेड़ियों को वो खाना खाने के लिए लेके गया था. तो अचानक से भूकंप आता है. Earthquake comes and he falls into the ditch, into the ground. When he falls into the ground, he sees a cave in that ground somewhere. And he is, of course, curious. He opens the door. There is a dead man inside. The dead man's, There's no body, there's just bones. He see a ring on his finger, the dead man's body's finger. He takes that finger out, the ring out, put it on, and comes back up. And when he comes back up onto the ground, he was sitting with his friends, and he just tried to play with that ring. Of course, being curious, he plays with that ring. When he tried to turn it, he becomes invisible. He becomes invisible. And when he turns again, he becomes visible again to the people. The people are just in awe. What has happened? Right? ऐसा कैसे हुआ? चमत्कार. तो Gyges को पता चलता है कि he has gotten some great power in his hands now. Now, because of the powerful ring, he stops tending his flock. He goes to, he starts working for the king, and he uses that ring to become invisible in the palace. He manages to, seduce the queen, and then he, with the help of queen, he kills the king, and he becomes the king himself. That is the story of Ring of Gyges in this Plato's Republic book. Now Glaucon says, come back to the Socrates and Glaucon discussion. This was a story of Ring of Gyges told by Glaucon. Glaucon says, how people can benefit by acting unjustly. After all, wouldn't any rational man act like Gyges did if they finds benefit without consequences? अगर हम पकड़े नहीं गए, हमको ये sure shot पता है कि हम अगर पकड़े नहीं जाएंगे, we are invisible. Not exactly invisible, but we are above the law in some way. Will we act justly, or will go for unjust means and actions? Glaucon says yes. If we are not caught, if we know that we are not going to get caught, we act unjustly, like Gyges. Now Glaucon, what he does is he divides good things in 3 categories. One is the things which we desire for their own sake, like pleasure, joy. The things which we want for the value they bring, right? Like this marker, there is some value which it is bringing to my life. I'm using it. The value is in its work. उसके काम में उसका value, उसके function में, उसको telos कहा जाता है, Greek, ancient Greek में. So the second thing is things which we want for the sake, for the value they bring in our life. The third is the things which we desire for their own sake and the value which they bring. First is intrinsic value, which means the value, the things we desire for the value of themselves, for their own sake, like pleasure, joy, happiness. We don't want happiness for the sake of something else. Happiness को लेकर किसी कहीं जाना नहीं है. Happiness final गंतव्य स्थान है. That is the final end. That is intrinsic value. Second is instrumental value. Instrumental value is such as this. This has an instrumental value. उसके काम में है उसकी value. When उसका काम हो जाएगा, मैं फेंक दूंगा. Right? The second thing is, Glaucon says, the second thing is instrumental value. The things we want for the value they bring in our life. The third thing is 1 plus 2. Both of them, both intrinsic and instrumental. Health, knowledge. We want knowledge for the sake of knowledge plus what value it brings. Now, Glaucon says this, the justice. Why we act justly? Because it brings value. Like this has brought the value in my life. The cell phone, everything in the material things in your life. He says We act justly because of the value they bring in our life. It is a burden, but it brings rewards. The acting justly, it is a burden in our life, but it brings rewards. That's why we act justly. We act justly in a good way because of the external influences. We act justly. We are not just in ourselves. हम सिर्फ appear होते. We are not good people. We just appear good. Glaucon says. Socrates disagrees. Socrates says, we act justly because of the third option. Because it brings value to our life and it is right in itself. वो क्यों तीसरा ऑप्शन सॉक्रेटिस चूज करता है? वो इसलिए क्योंकि वो कहता है कि हमारे ह्यूमन सोल में 3 पार्ट्स होते हैं. 1, 2, 3. One is reason, one is appetite, desires, and one is spirit. He says reason guides us to the truth and knowledge. You can say logic to understand reason, which means logic. It brings us to the truth and knowledge, influenced by spirit and appetite. Now, what is spirit? Spirit is righteous, ambitious, and the source of bold actions. Like, we would want our soldiers to have high spirit because they should be able to take bold actions. They should be righteous and ambitious. What is appetite? Appetite is baser bodily desires. Appetite is baser bodily desires. Socrates says, philosopher is led by reason. He checks his spirit. He is led by reason. His life is led by reason. His spirit keeps check on his appetite. You understanding it? उसका तर्क उसके जीवन को चलाता है. उसका स्पिरिट उसके भूख को, उसके डिजायर्स को चेक में रखता है. That is the reason, and that makes the philosopher just and happy. Philosophers, that's why, would not commit 2 desires. Because of the spirit controlling the appetite, he will only be led by reason, and that's why we will not commit to our desires. Will not do bad things which we desire. Tyrant, Gyges जैसा व्यक्ति, उसके appetite को, he will give in to the appetite. He will give in to the desires because his spirit is not able to keep in check the appetite and he's not reasonable enough. So that's why even if he is king, he is in disharmony. He is not happy. He is enslaved by his base desires. Okay. So we are almost done. There is only last thing. I want to read this note. I've taken this note from someone else, but this is important to discuss or to tell you. Let me read it out. Listen to me carefully.
Let me begin by clarifying what kind of activity we are entering. Political philosophy is not primarily about acquiring doctrines. It is about reordering one's own commitments. And that reordering is not always comfortable. The texts we are about to study will not simply tell us what justice is. They will force us to ask why we hold the views we already hold. They make us raise doubts about our long-cherished, settled beliefs. They will expose our deep-seated assumptions that normally remain invisible. The challenge is not that the arguments are obscure. The challenge is that they strike too close to home. Philosophy unsettles us not by giving us unfamiliar information, but by interrogating what we take for granted. It hits our prejudices hard. It does not move us outward toward novelty. It turns us inward toward self-examination. And once the problems in our cherished presuppositions are made visible to us, they cannot return to their previous invisibility. And this is the risky personal dimension of studying ethical and political philosophy. There is also a civic dimension. It is tempting to think that studying justice automatically refines public virtue and that it produces clear political judgments and better citizenship. Sometimes it does, but it can also make us an evil human being. A society depends in part on shared assumptions. Philosophy places those assumptions under scrutiny. That scrutiny can make participation in public life more reflective, but also more complicated. This tension is ancient. In Plato's dialogue Gyges, Callicles tells Socrates that philosophy, pursued beyond moderation, ruins a person's ability to function effectively in political life. There is a serious concern there. Reflection can interrupt momentum, examination can slow action. He gives an advice to Socrates to stop philosophizing, abandon argument, and get a normal working life. And Callicles did have a point, because philosophy distances us from conventions, from established assumptions, and from settled beliefs. And, this is why, people generally give an alternative response. That is to declare these philosophical questions unresolvable, and they retreat into skepticism. However, this offers no real stability, because moral disagreements have persisted for centuries. But that persistence does not license indifference. We cannot suspend judgment about justice, equality, obligation, or rights. Even refusing to theorize is itself a position with consequences. Immanuel Kant observed that skepticism can serve as a pause for reason, a moment of self-correction, but it cannot be its final destination. Human reason does not rest comfortably in resignation. It seeks orientation. Kant says, skepticism is a resting place for human reason, which can reflect upon its dogmatic peregrination and make a survey of the region in which it finds itself in order to be able to choose its path in the future with greater certainty. But it is not a dwelling place for permanent residence. So the aim of this course is not to provide final settlement. It is to cultivate disciplined unrest in the mind and to clarify the structure of our moral thinking and to see what follows from it. Where that inquiry leads is not predetermined. What is certain is that it will involve us.